Hello, my friends. John Wilson here, and I have a question for you. Are you ready to finish this year strong? Well, hey, it's that time of year to start planning your year-end equipment purchases, and I'm here to tell you that IVOCLAR has really stepped up their game and is offering some of the most incredible deals on mills and furnaces. Here at Sunrise, we've certainly been impressed with IVOCLAR's quality, but more importantly, how they've been a true partner to me and my laboratory. When you can invest in reliable technology and save, well, it's a no-brainer, right? So if you've been thinking about your first mill or an upgrade, I certainly encourage you to reach out to them today.
And of course, we appreciate IVOCLAR for their continued support. Welcome to Voices from the Bench, a dental laboratory podcast. Send us an email at info@voicesfromthebench.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Greetings and welcome to episode 348 of Voices from the Bench. My name is Elvis.
My name's Barbara.
Second place, Barbara, if I might
Right on.
throw that out there. Yeah. So you sent me a text this morning. What are you doing? Races that don't benefit the foundation all of a sudden?
Yeah, but it's called Miles for Moffitt. So they raise money for cancer. And my soon-to-be daughter-in-law, her really good friend, passed away from brain cancer at a very young age. And so, yeah, we raised money and I ran my ass off. Let me tell you, I was really proud. So, yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. I really enjoyed it.
Second place in your age group, man? What was it, a big race or?
There was 2,600.
That's a big race.
Yeah.
That's a big race, yeah.
Yeah.
Where was it? In Tampa?
It was downtown Tampa, and then there was twice as many people walking. So my son and his girlfriend and her father, they all walked. And so after the race, I walked to them and then finished walking with them. So it was beautiful.
That's awesome. Did you just smoke them twice?
Yes. How you doing?
I'm doing good, yeah. I think when we recorded a couple of days ago, I told you we had our first snowfall.
Yeah.
It's all gone now. There's no more snow. This is Indiana. People are out mowing yards today, so.
It was 50 degrees this morning. I froze my ass off. I was so cold. And I wore shorts, of course, because I always wear shorts when I run. But so I'm complaining about 50, just saying.
I just went for a run, and it was 38.
Oh, I hope our listeners enjoy our talk about running because I know we both love it. Sorry, guys. We bore you.
It's something they have to put up to get to the dental stuff, I guess.
All right, let's do it.
Can you believe that this weekend is a short weekend? It's Thanksgiving already.
I know. And it's a late Thanksgiving, and it just flew by.
It's crazy that we're almost to the end of the year. Do you have big plans for Thanksgiving?
I'm going to my sister's house and having it with my mom and my family. And it's going to be a little sad this year for my boys. So I'm just trying to be as up as I can, but moving on. Yeah. You?
Our tradition of the Brazilian steakhouse.
Oh, good for you.
We don't cook, we don't clean, we go, we eat, we come home, we nap. So.
Nice. All right.
So, with it being almost the end of the year, of course, we get to talk about all the great shows in 2025. I know we've done this before, and we're going to keep doing this because that is just how excited we are. It's not long before we're all going to be in Las Vegas at Vision 21. That's January 16th to the 18th at the Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. Our good friend Joe Young.
Yes, congrats.
Fearless leaders of the fans of the Voices from the Bench Facebook group, he becomes Presidente.
Congratulations.
Please, if you've never been to Visions, this is a great year to go and support a good friend of ours.
And then, thanks to the wonderful people at IVOCLAR, Elvis and I will once again be set up in their grand ballroom across from the registration desk during the LMT Lab Day Chicago 2025. And that is February 20th to 22nd. So excited. I know you are, and I am too, to be back in Chicago and see all of our amazing people in the industry. And companies are starting to release the lineup of speakers and courses. I bet this one is going to be the biggest year yet. So make your plans and come see us and be on the podcast.
Yeah, we just recently found out they're, celebrating 20 years of
20 years at
Emacs?
Emacs. Yes.
That's
Super
pretty
exciting.
big.
Yeah. And I bet they have a beautiful, awesome party. And yeah, it's just congrats, IVOCLAR.
So what did you do before Emacs?
We used to do felt traffic.
Was everything just kind of subpar?
Yeah, fully layered. And then we did Empress. And then they moved into Emacs. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Eris. I
awesome.
think it was called Eris, and then another generation, and then it was Emacs. So yeah, they're always doing something. Wait
Yeah,
and see, guys.
took some time, but they got there, and here it is 20 years later.
Yes,
Exciting.
sir.
And then, of course, the dream comes true for both of us as the good people at EXOCAD take us once again international.
I know.
This is so great. And I saw tickets just got released for IDS 2025. This is March 25th to the 29th. Yeah, you heard that right. 4 days. 4 days. In Cologne, Germany. Now, neither of us have been, and we're excited to experience the biggest dental show in the world. So, of course, we hope many of our international fans come and find us and sit down and talk with us. I mean, when we were in Spain, we met so many people at the EXOCAD Insights. We just can't wait to see who we meet in Germany.
And hopefully they're all going to speak English.
They're going to have to.
Okay.
And I am going to make them all say their own name.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm down with that.
Yeah. Unless you're Smith, we got a problem. So this week, we talked to a non-dental person that got into our space because of the need for IT support. Mike Gordon has always been good with computers. After moving to Hawaii for a construction job, I'm a little jealous over here, Mike eventually opened a company that did IT support for small businesses. It was getting contacted by a couple of GPs about setting up an in-office 3D printer. Mike discovered a new path. Eventually, he started 3D Dental. I love that name.
Me too.
And to help offices with equipment and support. His newest venture is direct print clear aligners with LexCreo. Mike explains how he is growing the AI for treatment planning, the benefits to direct print, and how the shape memory plays a huge role, and what exciting new things this workflow will allow us to print next. So join us as we chat with Mike Gordon. Voices from the Bench. The interview. Barb and I are super excited today to talk to a gentleman that is in the 3D printing space, but what I'm interested in is direct aligner 3D printing because I know zero about it. Michael Gordon, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having us. We're very excited about it.
Absolutely. Yep. So I want to learn all about what you're doing with clear aligners. We're going to get into all of that, but I don't think you have much of a dental background. So tell us about yourself.
Sure.
And how you found dental.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, thank you so much for having us. I'm Mike with 3DNA Dental. We were founded about 3.5, 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
And basically, I come from the IT space. So from very, very, very early on, from interesting turn of circumstances, I have been in essentially IT support absolutely my whole life. Helping people of another generation start to adopt these tools as they became useful was always a passion for me.
You mean like an older generation?
I mean, not necessarily only older, but certainly that is a factor. I think, like in general, there are just some people that it comes naturally to in terms of it being intuitive, and then also just a passion for technology and what it can allow for in terms of efficiency, even though that's not always the case.
I'm one of the other people.
Yeah. Hey.
I'm the people that need you to come show me.
Yeah, exactly. If you didn't exist, I wouldn't have a job. So I'm all for it.
Touche.
The nice thing is Barb embraces it, though. A lot of people think they can and they shouldn't. But Barb knows.
I try. Let's just put it that
But when you say IT support, Mike, are you talking like phone support for servers and that kind?
Yeah, it's exactly right. So when I was in 7th grade, my school got this grant to implement a bunch of new technologies. So we basically ended up being able to put in like 3 new computer labs and a few other technologies like smart boards and things like that for the teachers to use in class. And myself and one other student sort of were super passionate about it, and they didn't really have anybody within the school system already that was ready to take it on. So we basically got hired by the school to implement this technology over a summer.
Wow.
In 7th grade?
I know, it's crazy. It turns out actually they started to pay me. So, I got myself a nice computer and a little audio system in my room. And then they found out that actually they weren't allowed to pay me because I was a minor. So they ended up giving me like school credits instead. So I did pretty well with that in the end.
What era are we talking? What was it, like Windows? What?
Yeah,
XP,
definitely. Windows 95 for sure was a thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so very good fun. And I just had an incredibly lucky set of circumstances to be able to, set up labs and support them literally throughout my whole high school time. I was also like, the guy that went around and fixed stuff. So, and set up the stuff for all the teachers and, pretty much pushed my life in a certain direction, I'd say.
Sure.
Wow.
When I left school, I still didn't exactly have a goal of exactly where I wanted to end up. And my parents are both medical doctors, so there was some expectations there.
Yeah. Yeah. No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. I did pull the trigger on going to college, but it didn't last very long before I realized I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I stopped going to school and I actually started doing construction, which was also in my background. Through my dad and I did a lot of projects, and I also just helped out a lot of friends with some construction work over time. With my IT and construction sort of somehow came together a good amount, and ended up picking up a job in Maui, Hawaii as a green electrician.
What's a green electrician?
Meaning somebody with no experience. Green, like,
Gotcha.
Green state.
I thought it was environmental friendly.
I know, honestly. That's where I was headed in my brain, yeah.
I feel like green is just getting thrown around these days. I must feel confused. So, yeah, I ended up in Hawaii and doing construction. And then when the 2008 market crash hit, shortly thereafter, there really was no work out here. So I ended up going back in IT, starting a IT company out here for small business IT and hardware repair and custom hardware creation. So like we would create computers for clients and whatever else they needed hardware wise, and then implement like software and get them sort of more efficient from running their business perspective. And then we also had a walk-in repair service for computers and cell phones and tablets and all that kind of stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And during that stretch, while I did that for about 13 years, we got into 3D printing in about 2012, just like, regular MakerBot style G-code, like PLA printers, things like that.
Just as a hobby.
It was a bit of a hobby. I mean, we had ideas. We did some prototyping for people, and it was super early on in a way where it was still very hobby-esque and just as an industry,
yeah,
I'd say. Not to say that nobody was doing something really cool, but I think you had to really land in the right place for that. It wasn't like an easy part of entry at all in 3D printing at that point. So it was my goal to get into 3D printing from at least that time, if not before. And I'd been following several of the technologies. So about 3.5 years ago, I was approached by a couple of GPs who wanted to implement 3D printing in their clinic and really were starting from scratch. So I went through the process of what it looked like to implement 3D printing about at that time. And for me, it just was like a night, and it was just a bell went off in my head. And I said, instead of trying to make it work with a very low profit industry of cell phone or all this electronic repair, where the reality is that it's a throwaway culture and we're really not valuing the repair side of that, which is, hey,
yeah,
life is what it is, right? We got to move with the punch.
There's a reason why there's not 100 TV repair places anymore.
That's right. Not like the old days. Right?
Yeah.
No.
So yeah, I made the pivot. I want to stick with what I'm good at in terms of IT support and really training and helping people take advantage of these tools, but do it in a place that can be more valued and has a lot more higher ceiling, let's say. So that's the move that we made into dental. And at first we were all about, dentures. We were doing some all-on-X work. We were doing implant crowns. We were really trying to get the GPs I was working with into some really cool spaces. And it went really well. Like we started a design service actually out of Nepal.
Wow.
So that we actually donated some equipment there and trained them on EXOCAD and set up computers over there. And then they still do actually help those GPs with their designs. So we were expecting the design side of things to be a big portion of the business. At this point, I've personally kind of gotten out of that area. I mean, not to say we don't do design, of course we do, but it's not where I put my main focus. My main focus is really on the equipment, capital equipment itself, and the implementation of that equipment, and then ongoing support, right? Because for us, like, we saw pretty early on that 3D printing in dental would need, if it wasn't just going to be the early adopters and we're really going to get to mainstream adoption, there would need to be a real copy paste solution. Not to mention, when you have staff turnover, you need a backup plan as to how you're going to handle that, right?
Yeah,
So
that's for sure.
that's really how we sort of formed our company, was to fill that niche.
How did the GPs, that's general practitioner dentists, find you guys?
So I live in Maui. Those are people that live on Maui. So it was a personal connection, actually.
Okay.
Basically, they were like, oh, yeah, 3D printing. And one of their dental hygienists is actually a good friend of mine who we do outrigger canoe paddling together.
Yeah.
So she mentioned my name. We connected, and that's kind of how it started.
So it was a friend of a friend again, Elvis.
Yeah.
And when was this?
3.5, 4 years ago. I don't.
Okay, so 3D printing was around in our industry. What did the GPs want to print? What did they want to get into?
Well, I think that a lot of people start with just night guards as the obvious target.
True.
Especially, it's totally clinic dependent, I would say, and specialty dependent for sure. But this particular clinic, we were interested in night guards just to start with, kind of get our feet wet, and then we went pretty much straight into dentures. And then through our process of getting into dentures, we were more and more, and just because of the connections that one of the GPs had, we got into more all on X work. So I got some really good experience there.
Is this where you learned all your dental?
Yeah, well, I mean, not since then. I think I've worked with a lot of different doctors now, and I picked it up along the way, I'd say. But in the lab world, I think it seems like people either are family to the dental lab world or they come out anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Definitely, most of my dental knowledge has come in the last 4 years, for sure. I didn't.
So when they contacted you, did they know like what printer they wanted and what they wanted to do, what they were interested in, or did you have to research everything for them?
Yeah, the second thing. Yeah, so that's why I got the impression that like this was not something that people would reasonably be able to take on their own without really shifting their focus and just sort of hoping for the best,
Yeah.
And 4 years ago there were like maybe 10 dental specific 3D printers that you had to choose from, and all the resins and which ones limited you to which resins and blah blah blah. But now there's probably 50 different dental specific 3D printers, and I'm not sure anybody can exactly tell the difference anymore on certain aspects.
I don't know how people choose them anymore. There's so many.
Well, hopefully they work with us, and then we can help them choose.
There you go.
Yeah. So how do you make your choice when there's like 4 or 5 back then? What were you looking for? Speed? Materials?
I think that primarily, like first you need to think, what's your target? What are the workflows that are going to add the most value to the practice? So that's step one. From there, biocompatibility, I think, is right up there with like accuracy. So biocompatibility and accuracy, I would put like right after you find your targets. Yep. And then from there, for sure, speed, build volume, the viscosity of the resins it can handle. So the level of heating it can handle, and the downward pressure, like the pressure, the force of the motors, let's say, the stepper motors involved, is a factor. So it really, there's a laundry list of things to consider. And also, like what kind of space do you have in your clinic, and which aspects of this make sense to take on in clinic, and which by the way, when I first was getting into this, I was like, oh, within 5-10 years, like everything's going to be 3D printed. You know what I mean? And at this point, I feel like it's not to say that can't happen at this point, but I definitely am less convinced that it will make sense to do all things in clinic, like by any means, right? Like there's going to be plenty of things that need to stay in the lab world. And I think that what I would like to see happen is a sort of, which is of course already in existence, but the partnership between the doctors that are performing in clinic printing with a lab that understands that and has, let's say, a compatible style of printing, means that they can be the backup plan when the clinicians don't have the staff or the time, and they can take on the aspects that they don't want. So for example, when we start talking about clear aligners, it's going to be more applicable, but essentially, like a lot of doctors, it'll make sense in their clinic to do the first few trays just so that they have that advantage of immediate delivery to the patient, or at least let's say very, very close to immediate, depending on what they want to do. And then beyond that, maybe they sub out the rest to a lab so that they don't have to actually do that and maintain the staff and the effort there. So it just depends. It really depends on the size of the clinic, the cost of square foot for their establishment and all that. Like there's a lot of factors that play into it. but it's clear to us at this point that there's going to need to be a very long-term and healthy relationship between the labs and those in-clinic labs to do the best job we can and to be the reliable in the way that it needs to be reliable.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I used to walk into a dental office, and if they had a CEREC machine or if I saw a printer, I'd be like, yeah, I'm out. Don't need you. But now I've totally pivoted, and I'm like, let's talk about all the stuff you can't do or you don't want to do. And some of my favorite conversions these days are ones where we design and they print.
Right. Yeah.
I don't need to grind on a denture anymore. Let's do it right, and it works beautifully.
One of the early offerings we had that we thought was maybe unique at the time, but hopefully, for me, I would definitely hope a lot of people were doing this, but it was to deliver the design files, the digital design. So we send them a link to make sure they're happy with the actual design to the degree that people can really tell through 3D software, because I think that the whole art in and of itself, just to review digital design digitally is not that easy. But anyway, delivering approved digital designs already nested, sliced, and ready to literally hit print on their printer, right? And we even tried to get to the point where we could sort of give them. I had this whole like USB, like remote USB NAS system, like a network attached storage drive, so that I could like upload things to a USB that we gave them the equipment for, and you could literally just pull that. One of their employees could pull that USB out and put it in their printer and hit print, But the reality was there was some security concerns about that, and it just wasn't. And now again, like for me, I think that design, AI, and the world of design is coming together so quickly that instead of more being involved in the direct designing myself, what I'm more interested in is helping in the collaboration from the doctors to the people doing the designing to the AI companies. Because I feel like in the long term, and I'm working with Dr. Jean-Marc Retrouvé, he's like a orthodontist. He's working really hard on the ability to use our understanding of biomechanical forces and how aligners really work with AI. If we are going to try to move towards having some AI help in planning that's truly useful and of the kind of quality it needs to be, we really want to get to the point where we can share information from many different sources. A little bit like Bluetooth. So I don't know if you guys are aware, but like Bluetooth originally was just an idea. It's a standard that, many, many, many different companies use so that they all are compatible in some sense, right? And it was something I had to sit down and agree upon to make that happen. And I feel like that's what I would like to see happen on the digital design side, where we're kind of focused on ortho right now, but not necessarily. Like, we help doctors implement all kinds of different workflows. And one of the problems is, finding solid designers that are consistent and have a turnaround time that they can rely on. But also, again, working with many different designers, I just feel like no one group of designers is going to have enough data to do a good job with AI. And then ongoing, right, the best way to have the best AI would be to continue to feed it the best data consistently and as often as possible. So some kind of a grouping of that would be so cool to like work that out as a system where, it's almost like a social media, but you actually get to get paid, right? So according to the amount of data you put in, you get paid like that. And then there's different versions of how you can submit your data, where we can scrape all the information that would be highly relevant and useful, like patient age and a lot of different factors that can help us know what works and what doesn't. And then not to mention just actual results, right? So like needing not only for the plan to get implemented, but we need scans throughout the process to see what's actually been going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're creating this? You're creating this kind of global network of AI through clear aligners?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're focused right now, right? With direct print aligners, a big part of that is the planning aspect, and there's quite a few different softwares out there that people can use to do setup. And again,
sure,
it's like each of these companies is going to have their own version of this AI, and they do already, right? But it's, nobody really, ULab it's like you click the setup thing and it kind of gets you close and then you go from there. I don't know that anyone else has really gotten to where it's super useful yet, but ultimately my argument is that my understanding of AI indicates to me that the best version of it would be a shared version, one that everybody push together. Yeah.
I just worry that dental is going to be able to come together like that.
I know, right? I know.
We love our closed systems, and everybody has their own version of AI. And
well, nobody's ever had AI before, and frankly, we still don't have AI, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's an argument from 2 points. I think like I think there's a big moral argument to be made about the quality of care that can come from a collaboration here. And then
I agree.
Yes,
Yeah.
for
I
sure.
also think that one of the issues in the past, and the reason why we are sort of like, I don't know, I don't want to say enemies, but it kind of feels that way a lot of the time, where like companies feel like if it's a competitor, there's no collaboration available. Not to say everyone's
Sure.
like that, but that certainly has been present in my experience. I think that they need to get paid, right? Like it can't just be like, it needs to be financially viable for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And if that were the case, then I think that maybe there could be a collaboration. But I don't like right now. It's really we have it as an idea where we've approached quite a few of the planning software companies about it, and we have some definite interest on that side. But again, for me, I think this is a much larger project. It's really a conversation to be had many times over, and
Yeah.
I don't know what it'll look like in the end. It's more like, to me, that it's a conversation about what we'd like to accomplish, and then maybe we can all work together to get there.
So do you work mostly with dentists at this point and no labs, or are you a little bit of labs?
Very little bit of labs. We have some good connections on the lab side, and I believe Jim Collis was on your
Oh
podcast a
yeah.
couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're friends with him, and so he's helping us kind of introduce ourselves to the lab world a bit more, since now we're getting into metal 3D printing, which I think now, and when I say the reason we've gotten into it now is because it is much more affordable than it has been by you know massive percentages.
Oh yeah.
It's still a workflow that to me does not integrate well with in clinic, right? So for
Yeah.
me, as we
Yeah,
get
they
into
don't
metal,
make metal.
it requires us to get a stronger relationship going with the lab world. And because like I said, I've sort of converted a bit to thinking that at no point should we even want to get rid of labs, just because there's going to be this movement to in clinic. We really want to continue this collaboration. So it's a win-win for us to get involved with the lab world at this point more deeply. And then again, because of the metal 3D printing, there's some really cool stuff in the pipeline on that. First of all, like I said, because price points are coming down and quality of prints is going up, but also recycling or upcycling. So all this, one of the companies we're working with for the metal powders, they
Mm-hmm.
have it's from 6K additive. So they're not specifically in the dental space at this point, but they have, from a theoretical perspective, really the best way to create powders in the most uniform and smallest particle size that
Yeah.
I've come across. So, and that's one of the big challenges currently, that in the stepping ladder of making 3D printing and metal better, is having a really consistent source of powder that has that really small size particle and is able to be uniform throughout, right? Because the way that 3D printing with SLM or laser metal 3D printing, it heats the powder extremely hot, but in that process, it kind of has like a movement of the adjacent powder or surrounding powder, and
Yeah.
the smaller your particle size and the more uniform they are, the more predictable that is, right?
Yep.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, so because of the 6K additive company using a new form of heating through their system, it's called a unimelt system, and it's a plasma heating system that was developed actually in the process for creating graphene originally.
Wow.
So these are all like super different worlds, right? Like not really in the dental world, but the repercussions of this advancement are so obvious to me for dental, So we're really trying to connect from a really fundamental way why things should and would be the best option, with the right people who can do the work and who have the connections and the end users. And the beauty of this is that we can actually take your milled titanium and stainless steel. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to do chromium cobalt as well in the near future. But we're able to purchase people's milled scraps and aspects of the pucks that they weren't able to take advantage of, and turn that into the powder that they can use on their printer.
Yeah, every lab listening's going ding, 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 ding right now.
So now when I want to approach labs, I don't want to approach them about them spending money with me. I want them to know that I might be able to purchase their scraps, So it's like,
Wow.
it's a win-win, I think, is what that's really what we're going for, right? Is we're all about support. We're all about implementation of technology. And yeah, we've been focused on the clinic side because that for us in the 3D printing side was a larger target. But the reality is this type of work, the breadth of its usefulness is really wide. So we don't want to limit ourselves and only help clinicians either.
So you actually went out to a company that was outside the industry that had this technology and was like, hey, do you know that you can print copings for teeth?
Yeah. Yeah, to some degree. I mean, the company that makes the powder is not that interested in what you use it for at the end of the day.
Huh.
You know what I mean? I mean, of
Fair
course
enough.
they
Yeah.
need to know,
Yeah.
they need to know the answer so that they can create the product the way they need to. But their process is all about creating the powder itself. And then again, they're involved in many different industries, and that this same system works for many different materials, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the companies we work with these advancements, they see it as a big advantage to have a company like ours who already has their foot in the door considerably with dental and with this particular market. And for them, they don't want to have to like start from scratch and start marketing their product just because they realize it's applicable to that industry.
Huh.
Because which one are they going to choose? You know, like they could
Right.
go to many different versions of the same issue. So yeah, we've had some really great luck or great success or experience so far when we approach these companies about our ideas on how their product would really do well in dental. They're very happy to have us help them implement and introduce it and all that.
Yeah, because it's something that they might obviously didn't think of that it could be purposeful for.
And you know, we take a percentage, of course, but they're going to benefit from the idea of this being
Yeah.
in that industry. So it's
Sweet.
just we're looking for win-wins all the way.
Yep.
So you mentioned, let's see, chrome, cobalt, titanium, and stainless steel. Those are the three metals that people are printing.
Yeah, those are the most common printed materials for sure at this point. Bigo or Bago, depending on how you pronounce, they're pretty popular on the metal 3D printing side. So they've got all three of those powders up and going.
Sweet.
And you know, like I said, like till recently, I think that the price tag to get involved in metal 3D printing as a lab is in the upward of, let's say, $250,000, right? Well, now we can get you in for under 100,000. You know what I mean? With all the equipment that you need. You know, this would be a price tag that would be in some ways affordable for in clinic. Like they could make that pay for itself with depending on the type of practice they're running. You know, depending on what they're making, like palatal RPEs or copings, like you're saying, or titanium bars if they do a lot of all on X. You know, but the reality is like the process of 3D printing also requires sintering and you need a nitrogen generator, you need vacuum systems, you need a metal cutting, you know, like bandsaw, there's a lot. Plasma polisher would be ideal. You need a laser welder. Like there's a lot of things that make it much less approachable, let's say, for the in-clinic perspective.
Yeah, it's not off the printer in a light box.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot that
in
goes
2 hours
into it.
and then you have a test print. You know, it's not like that.
Yeah. But are offices gonna print their own frames? Why would they even? I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you do enough RPEs and you do enough titanium, you know, like prosthodontists, if they had a multiple prosthodontist practice and had a small lab that they implemented this in, I think that again, I mean, you know, you can divide up each case and see how many cases it would take you to pay this capital equipment off.
Sure.
The reality is like definitely under a year is very feasible for a lot of these people and with most of the capital equipment that we sell.
Yeah, because if you add up a year's worth of your lab bill,
right,
and all the money that you're paying out on it, and you turn around and invest in.
But that's a very short version of the equation, right? Like obviously there's also all of the actual work itself, and then having the right staff and keeping the right staff and the hassle with that. So I think, like I said, there's zero doubt to me that a ongoing relationship between the in-clinic labs and the real labs should be, or the, let's say, purposefully labs meant only for that purpose, you know, we'll have an ongoing relationship indefinitely, to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like there's a ton of labs doing frames anymore, honestly.
Right. And even on copings, like adding porcelain. I mean, you know, again, I'm new to dental comparatively, so it's kind of nice for me because I don't have prejudgments on what to go after. I rely a lot on the people I meet and who I talk to and the demand that I notice in the moment, you know. But having said that, it's obviously a disadvantage as well to just not be aware of certain things.
Well, are people printing implant interfaces, or is that still? Are we shying away of that?
Like
because
multi-unit like custom abutments?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know at this point if anybody is 3D printing custom abutments, but I think that is exactly my point, is that those are targets that are much more approachable now than they were 2 years ago from an accuracy perspective
100%,
and from a polishing perspective, right? Now, some of the metal 3D printing companies have essentially created a hand-in-hand system with CNC. So you 3D print your part and then you CNC, you mill the sort of exact dimension so that you have the accuracy that you need while having like 95% less waste or something like that. So
Wow.
there's
Oh.
also that option. But the nicest, and for sure, frameworks like RPE frameworks and a lot of different orthodontic and just in general appliances, metal appliances can be printed now
Mm-hmm.
without the need for milling at all, with just polishing.
Seems weird to me that you would print then mill it.
I know, right?
I guess
It
it makes
does.
sense.
It does. But
Yeah.
if you look at the savings from the materials themselves, because these are very expensive materials too, so it does. And the equipment, milling equipment has come down so much that I think it's approachable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I mean, my goal would be to not need a mill, just in the sense of like, we want to be as efficient as possible. So if we didn't need it, then that would be the best version. So again, that's what drove me towards 6K additive and their ability to create 10 micron sized uniform particles that are round in shape. That's a very, very special thing to have. Like generally particle sizes go up to, anywhere from 150 microns to, let's say, 40 or 50. I don't
Yeah.
think there's a lot of companies able to go down to anywhere near 10 microns in a consistent way. That's what's very exciting, is we might be able to move towards not needing that milling step, right? Depending on the tolerances that you need, right?
Yeah, but it's more of the powder than it is the printer then.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a really cheap fiber laser, or the type of lasers that you're using weren't ideal, then I think that could still be the weakness. But in terms of like, for me, I see these technologies sort of stepstoning themselves up a little bit like a circular stair, where now the limitation is the material, and the material science needs to improve, and then it improves, and then it's like, well, if only we had a printer that was able to take advantage of it, and then they make that, and then it's like, oh, if only we had software that allowed us to do this efficiently, and you know what I mean?
I see what you're saying.
It keeps going up and up and up. And so for me right now, the powder, from what I understand in the introduction I've had in metal 3D printing, it's clear to me that uniform particle, small, extremely small uniform particle size, is going to be a massive, massive advantage. Again, because you don't want a lot of work after you're done printing. It needs to be as efficient as possible for it to make sense, and that's where we're headed. So I think that the small uniform particle was one of our bigger challenges, and hopefully this can make us move on to the next big challenge.
Which is a new printer. Yay! The cycle continues.
Well, there's different size printers with different numbers of lasers depending on how quickly you want to print and how big the build volume is.
Yeah.
So for sure, you're never going to stop needing to invest in capital equipment as we improve. But do we really want that to not be the case? I mean, realistically, improvement is in our blood, I think.
Yeah.
Sure.
So your company's like trifold. You do consulting, you do education, and you do supply. So you're selling the equipment and you do educating and training with it?
Yep.
Or do you do like a lot of different education and training?
Yeah. Well, whenever we bring on a product, we try to set up webinars and trainings for ourselves, obviously, but then also webinars with the CEOs usually, or whoever in the company makes the most sense, to introduce products in a way that we get to the ground floor on why this is a good idea, why is this useful, and explain it from the ground up. You know what I mean? So that there's not just it's not just a sales tactic. It's like, okay, here's a challenge that we have in the lab space. Here's an idea on how we've been able to solve it, and here's some examples of people who are already doing that. And now it's a question of price point, training, and do you have that clientele to be able to make that cost on that return on your investment?
So you kind of handhold them the whole way.
That's definitely the idea. And at the same time, I think it's the hand holding, is very custom also, right? Because different users have a very different level of need. And I think that's one of the things that's been missing in some of the larger companies. As you get larger as a company, you fundamentally get less efficient. I think we've all seen it.
Yeah.
And you just have to look at any large structure and notice how it becomes less efficient. But the idea for a large company to be able to tailor their service in a way that allows for all these different versions of users is much more difficult than a smaller company like us, where we really can tailor our price points and the type of support that you need based on just your needs. So for sure, that's a big part of our business, a big part of what makes us unique.
So you're based in Hawaii, but are you in the U.S.? Do you have somewhere like
Hawaii is in the U.S.
I mean, in the mainland, Elvis.
Everyone's like, what she means. But yes,
thank you.
My partner Paul Wilkins, I don't know if maybe we weren't live yet when we talked about it, but Paul Wilkins is my business partner. He's been in orthodontic sales for about 25 years. has just a huge number of connections in the industry. He's worked for a lot of the big companies, and also was a founder and owner of Ortho Technology, which was a company that got bought out by Henry Schein some time ago. So we have a considerable presence through Paul on the mainland. And then definitely our goal is to stay light, from an overhead perspective as a company. I think we'll do a better job for our clients if we only take on overhead in the ways that make sense,
Yep.
So we certainly try to stay remote as much as we can, because it saves them money and saves us the need to have different offices and whatnot. And then in terms of how we ship equipment, we often have drop shipping deals with our suppliers, but not always. We don't necessarily inventory all the things that we sell. But then from the support side of things, we also, because of my background in the consumer electronic repair world, I have a lot of connections with people who need to pivot into a space that has a higher ceiling from a profit margin and usefulness perspective, or let's say societal usefulness perspective. So I have partnerships with different repair and IT people who can jump in for us and travel to different locations or work with people in their area through us. So it's kind of just a really cool little nerd network.
Yeah, I know. I love that. It's important though, because once you have a client, their needs change, and they need more training, or they need different equipment. They need you to stay updated, and then you can just keep bringing them more value, I guess, is what
I think that it's a function of the fact that, like, this, when you implement digital technologies of any kind, but certainly in dental and within a practice where the bottom line is very important, I think what we all will benefit the most from is from sharing our experiences on where we run into problems and how we repair those problems. And as what we really need is a middleman like us, or middle person like us, where we're the ones who we adopt the technology early, we run through those problems ourselves, we implement them in several or many different places, who then also have an exponentiated version of these problems. And then because we get all the feedback from all those experiences, we get better and better and better at that copy-paste workflow, which again is what will benefit everybody the most, right?
Absolutely.
And you, of course, get that backup plan of, hey, my staff member is getting married and leaving or whatever it is, and now I'm struggling to replace this need, and we have the ability to help you do that within your clinic, as well as work with a network of labs who, or hopefully we'll be moving towards this more. We have a couple people, but that's what we would like, is a network of other labs, partner labs, that again share the same equipment, let's say, share the same workflows to some degree, and they're able to be your backup plan.
Yeah.
So if an office gets equipment from you,
right,
and for whatever reason it's not working, the person that ran it quit, you can also produce what they were printing.
Yeah, we as a company, we work with labs to make the prosthetics. We're not doing that ourselves for the most part.
Okay.
Some trial stuff, like so that people can get introduced to products and to finished products especially. But for the most part, we really don't have an interest in doing the lab work ourselves.
Smart.
Yeah, of course we have a research laboratory where we do this work, but in terms of doing it at scale, that's just not our goal. So.
Yeah. I want to talk about clear aligners because, the whole reason I kind of got interested, and this is all fascinating, but direct-to-print clear aligners, why is that just now a thing? I don't understand. Man. We've been printing night guards like crazy.
Right.
What's been the holdup?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and one that I think is not asked often enough. But essentially...
Leave it up to me.
Yeah. Essentially, it's really hard. And the reason that it's super, super hard is largely on the material science side.
Okay.
To get exactly the right formula that's, first of all, biocompatible, which has been a big, big, big struggle there. But also being able to print at 0.5 millimeter wide in an accurate way with a flexible material, especially when you're printing and it's warm, during the printing process. It's an elastomer. So it is a whole study of that takes taken multiple companies to advance that ability on, believe it or not, the shoe sole market.
The shoe sole market?
What?
Really?
What?
Has really allowed both of the companies. Well, that's not fair. The main company, in fact, the company we represent now that we distribute for.
You mean Dr. Scholl's? We can thank Dr. Scholl's for clear aligners?
Maybe not directly, but maybe in part. No,
that's the only person I know.
I'm sure you guys have heard of Carbon.
Yes,
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
right? So Carbon was
Yeah.
hired early on to do shoe soles for Adidas, and I want to say they did some Nike work as well, but I'm not 100% sure. There's another company that less people have heard of, but that we're really excited about and work with, named Lux Creo, and they
Yes.
partnered up with Asics and I believe New Balance and a couple
Asics,
of other
running
companies.
shoes, baby.
And so
Yes.
We know Barb's brand.
yeah, they created the shoe soles for them, and through that process, I had to really, really nerd out on that 3D printing accurately of an elastomeric product while having the strength requirements needed to be able to run on, So it was
That's
just a
hilarious.
beautiful challenge on that side of things that translated extremely well into dental clear aligners in a sort of fortuitous way, right? Like, not, I don't think anybody was originally planning that when they started the project. So that's, I think, majorly why it was tried many, many times from the dental side looking out and just never quite got there.
Yeah.
But these companies that had that experience from those outside industries were able to take what they learned and bring it into this industry, and it's been extraordinary. Like, it really is a game changer. So yeah, I think we should move into talking more and more about Lux Creo here, because we're
Yeah.
Yeah,
huge,
let's
huge
do it.
Please. Yeah, because so what? They found the formula for the resin so it could print thin and hot. Am I thinking this right?
Yeah, to some degree, yeah. So we're printing at around 40C while we're printing. So
Okay.
there's definitely a lot of stretchiness during that printing process that you have to account for. And so what they were able to do, and they created their own printer, therefore printer technology. I mean, it's a DLP 385, so it's not unique in that way, but the accuracy they're able to get from it stems from partly, of course, the quality of the parts that they use in their printer and the sturdiness of the printer, which is a very heavy, very, well, I shouldn't say like, obscenely heavy or anything, but definitely very robust compared to certain other brands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, their heating system is like unbelievably efficient. Like, it's pretty much my favorite part of their whole system from a mechanical perspective. And then the other beauty is that they create their material profiles all in-house at a level of detail that's just beyond what anyone that's not a complete ecosystem is doing. And then because they're able to do that because they have the software and the hardware and the ability to sort of, and the creation of the resins. And now, by the way, they've partnered up with many different resin companies that are sort of the leaders in the industry in pretty much every different aspect of dental.
Mm-hmm.
But their printer, because they're printing on their printer with these materials and making the profiles themselves, they're able to print, test for accuracy, scan, compare to the digital model, and then they're able to actually not only tweak their parameters from a printing perspective, but they are able to tweak their software. So they're actually creating digitally, they're changing the file itself during the slicing process, or even throughout the design process, to have thinner and thicker areas because of the way it's going to print. You see what I mean?
Wow.
Interesting.
Like it
So-
knows it?
Well, it's based off of experience, but the fact is that
Wow.
you have to print, find the inaccuracy, adjust, print, find the inaccuracy, adjust. You see what I mean? And not just
Yeah.
adjust the print profile, which can be very limiting in some ways, right? Like, there's 50, 60 different parameters you can change on a 3D printer in terms of the printing process, but those don't necessarily get you the result that you need. At the end of the day, there's a marriage between the digital design itself and the printing process in order to get us where we need to go. Not to mention the physical equipment itself. But at this point, DLP 385, like, this is stuff we have done for a long time. We're very, very good at it. And I think that the improvements there will be small and incremental until we have, let's say, a paradigm shift of some kind.
Wow.
So that's one of the major reasons that we're big fans of Lux Creo. Many reasons, I guess I just spouted off, but
Yeah.
but no, I really do think that they're one, by the way, they have a legitimate one-click workflow in both their design and then nesting and slicing software workflows.
Yeah, what does that mean? One click, like that's it?
One click, yeah. So essentially you tell the software what it is you're trying to make, you upload the file that you designed or that you need designed, and it literally will do that through an AI process.
Wow.
So you want to make a night guard, it will make the night guard for you through an AI process. If you want to make a retainer, it will do that through an AI process. If you have a plan that you've made in a planning software and it's a compatible planning software right now, then you can export your models and your PTS files, which are like the files that allow for your CNC cutter or your laser cutting machine to know what your trim line is going to be. You export that all into one directory, and this software is able to take everything from that directory and create the aligners and support them and slice them and put them, ready to print.
Wow.
Which was a huge problem, in the past. Like the other versions of clear aligners that we've worked with, have been really fun and interesting, and we've learned a lot. But at the end of the day, they were just not ready to be implemented in clinic, and there were a couple other issues that we moved away from them for. So Lux Creo at the end of the day has best blown the competition out of the water in our perspective.
But did I hear you still had to trim them?
No. So there's no trimming of the aligners at this point. You do have to remove the supports, which the reason why we're huge fans of Lux Creo is that their supports are they're digitally designed in the design software. Like instead of so I'm sure you guys are to some degree familiar with slicing softwares for 3D printers.
Yeah.
You normally you have this software that sort of detects islands and low points and then creates texture in order to solve those problems, right? Well, instead of doing it that way, what Lux Creo does is they actually identify what the trim line is because we've given it that information, and it creates a structure that moves to that trim line, right? So it's not taking an analysis and then performing from there only. It's actually working from the trim line itself, so that the supports don't, you don't have those sort of like tips. Some of the tips are more embedded and less embedded. They're all very evenly embedded into exactly where you wanted them.
Interesting.
And then beyond that, you can add individual supports as needed. So because, sometimes you want to add buttons or byte ramps or whatever it is, turbos, all kinds of different stuff. So there's so much cool stuff happening on the clear appliance world. I mean, EMA just signed a deal with Lux Creo, so now we're going to be able to do like essentially one-click mandibular advancement / snoring appliance, like airway devices.
Oh yeah, really?
Super cool stuff coming where not only can it be your airway device, but can also act as part of your aligner treatment program, which opens the door to allowing that to be covered by medical insurance.
I was just going to say that. I was wondering that.
There is so much excitement right now in that area. Like it's palpable.
And it's 3D printed. I don't know if anyone's 3D printing snore guards, probably, but
I mean, it's very, very new, right? And again, like this the fact that Lux Creo has been able to do these clear aligners the way they have opens the door to things like clear appliances on airway and mandibular advancement, right? So I think that honestly, my favorite part of being involved in this industry is the invention perspective, right? Like I think that more than 50% of the doctors we work with have something that they've wanted to create completely custom, and we've been able to do that with them. And that to me is like just by far the most rewarding and interesting part. But that's because I'm not a very good businessman, I think.
So they just keep throwing things at you like, could you make this, or could you try this, or what about this? And you guys just do it?
Which naturally turns into products for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a win-win. We try to create a relationship to the degree that people are interested. Like we try to create relationships for that reason and work together on promoting different products. But doctors are doctors. They don't have a lot of time to be doing outside work for the most part. But
right.
What's the strangest request you got?
What's the strangest request? I don't know about the strangest, but one of my favorite implementation of a direct print aligner technology that can only really be done now, that's where before this just wasn't a thing. So we can, obviously we can print on buttons. So we can do like lingual or buccal buttons, and we can do, now what they're doing is, so we slice, instead of having to cut it later, we, within the digital process, have two areas where the rubber band is going to slip through the aligner, and then it attaches buttons, one on the buccal, one on the lingual. And that in and of itself becomes an intrusive force without the need of the aligner being the, of course you need some retention, but that is the beauty of direct print aligners, is that we have massively more retention than you get from a traditional thermoform suck down version. And the accuracy is hugely better by 60% or something like that.
Wow.
So being able to do bands through the aligners, I mean, I understood that aligners can only push. Now you're pulling.
Exactly. That's my point, is like biomechanical forces are biomechanical forces. The question is, how do you apply them? And being able to 3D print something and go from concept to product in hours is just a massive tool, right? Like this is something that it's going to change the game. It's going to change the industry on its own without much prodding. Like you almost can't help but do these things,
Wow.
Adding in anterior bite ramps. Like we have a product called a transitional retainer where it's essentially a phase 1 retainer, right? So we hold your front 4 and your first molars, and we leave your 3, 4s, and 5s completely free so that they can erupt naturally, right? So it's basically just a printed in window over your 3, 4s, and 5s so that we're not affecting that movement at all, right? So this for pediatric cases, this is like a requirement on most pediatric first, what is it called? First aligner. I can't remember now what the name is, but aligners for phase 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's by itself is just one of those examples of things that we can start creating products just per our imagination. And when they get traction, boy, they, it's just,
they take
it's
off.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I imagine the cost per tray is a lot lower than traditional.
It is slightly lower, but the reality is that mostly comes from the labor the labor reduction.
Yeah.
Thermoform suck downs we've been doing this for a long time, and we got very, very good at it. At least from a larger lab perspective, it's going to be years and years before it makes sense to go to direct print aligners because of the production costs. I'm not, I do think that, again, labor-wise, there's no doubt that, anybody that works at clear aligner factory and has to do the polishing aspect, or the trimming aspect, I should say, trimming and polishing.
Hates it.
Yeah, the trimming is nuts.
Trimming and polishing is the worst. But, we sell the LEC, right? So you can certainly trim with the laser that requires 0 polishing when it's finished. And it's an incredible product. And it trims in 1 minute or something like that for no matter what, scalloped or straight. But for the direct print aligners, the real reason that I think people will start moving towards this, and this is the crux of our conversation around that, I think, and should be, is the shape memory that is embedded within these appliances. And the reason they're embedded, by the way, it's nothing fancy. It's not some gimmick or anything like that. It's really that when you thermoform a plastic, or when you create a plastic by injecting it into something, there's no pattern to how those long chain polymers are connected, right? So when you go past their stress strain, they deform and they can't come back. There's nothing that makes them want to come back to their shape that they were in. So instead, in 3D printing, we're creating it layer by layer, and we're connecting long chain monomer chains with oligomers from each layer, which creates this sort of lattice structure. This almost like the rope ladder on the back of a pirate ship kind of idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when you make this ladder system, and then now you have multiple ways that you're curing, so you have cross-linked versions of this shape, so that when you approach your glass transition temperature from the material after, post-use, it wants to return back to shape, right? So you can watch these aligners. You take this aligner that's been deformed, you put it in warm water at 60 degrees Celsius, and you just watch it move back into the printed shape that it was in. So from a clear aligner perspective, not only are the clear aligners that are 3D printed directly more accurate in terms of, hugging the tooth, the actual tooth shape, not needing to block out nearly as much the undercuts or the interproximal, so you're getting way more surface area contact. But on top of that, so we're more accurate just from a fundamental perspective in terms of how it's produced. But then on top of that, because of our shape memory, when your client every day cleans their aligner in the ultrasonic bath that also heats it to 60 degrees Celsius, it is returning back to its printed shape. So
that's crazy.
Classically, clear aligners start at massive forces at like 1,600 grams or something like that, right? So it's like 4 times stronger than you really need to move teeth, what the studies have shown that are ideal for tooth movement. But the reason that they have to do that is because within 3 days, these things are down to below the required biomechanical force needed, right?
And they still move.
Right. And so that's why you're using your tray. It hurts the client for 3-4 days, and then after that, you're just keeping them in that tray for another week or so, or maybe more, depending on the client, to sort of let those teeth settle in, get that movement for sure, and then move on to the next one. Well, with these direct print clear aligners, you're not coming off track at all in that process. Like, at least comparatively, it's like unbelievably better. I'm not trying to say there'll never be refinement cases, but I think that for multiple reasons, we're going to be getting rid of this, 60% average, on average, 60 to 70% of cases require refinement, which is like, what industry does that make sense in? You know what I mean? Like, where else would that be acceptable? Like 70% of the time, this isn't quite going to work, but you'll get there. You know what I mean? So anyway, we're super excited about the type of, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to poo-poo anybody's efforts there. I think it was a huge undertaking to get to where we got with thermoform clear aligners. But again, this is a paradigm shift, right, of how things are produced in order to allow for these mechanical properties that we're looking for. And somebody had this aha moment that this is the name of the game. This is why we need to attack this. So I think that that's the reason why labs are going to move towards direct print aligners, because doctors are going to want direct printed aligners because of the shape memory perspective and the increased accuracy, which, by the way, is prevalent, like not just in clear aligners. Like you look at the studies done on crowns, like 3D printed temporary or permanent restoration crowns, not to mention implant crowns, which even more so have some promising effects because the flexural modulus is so much higher than milled like zirconia or whatever. It's sort of acting like your periodontal ligaments, so you're giving yourself a little bit of flex. But the accuracy of a 3D printed crown and the fit that it gets on a tooth is like incredibly better. Like every doctor I've talked to that has put on a 3D printed temporary or a permanent is just blown away at how perfect it fits every single time, because you're not limited by your tool path and you're not limited by your head. Right? Yep. Yeah. And you can print 150 crowns in 40 minutes or less. You know what I mean? So it's just like,
no brainer.
Very, very, very interesting territory, right?
Wow.
I can see why you're so excited for this.
I know, you can hear it. You can hear it in your voice how psyched you are.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mike, that's some exciting stuff. I appreciate you coming on and educating us about this.
Absolutely.
Clear aligners, metal printings, everything. It's fascinating.
We really
it was really great.
We love your podcast. We want to find a legitimate and ideal and mutually useful way to get involved with you guys and with your lab partners out there. So.
Awesome. Well, this is a great start.
Yeah.
The website, 3dnadental.com. I love it's 3D and DNA. I love that. That's clever. Somebody was smart.
That, actually.
Oh,
no
yeah.
kidding.
Awesome.
She's a keeper. Mike, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Mike.
We appreciate you, and I'm sure we'll see you at all the dental shows.
Right? Yeah. We're going to try to, again, keep our overhead a little low, but we're definitely interested in meeting everybody and being a resource for anybody that we can be.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Appreciate again the opportunity.
You.
Yep.
Will do.
Thanks.
Oh, by the way, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, you can reach out. My email is mike@3dnadental.com. And then I can even give my number, and we have an 888 number that you can find on the site, but my number is 808-357-1323. And we are super open to working with anybody and even partnerships on any kind of projects moving forward. We're just we want to be a resource for sure.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye now.
Huge thanks to Mike Gordon for coming on and talking about the exciting world of 3D printing. It's amazing how much 3D printing the lab industry is leading in, guys. Between metal printing and how good the resins are getting, it's no wonder Mike's as excited as he is. So go check out 3dnadental.com to learn more. Maybe you want to get into clear aligners or even metal printing. It's a great place to start. Thanks, Mike.
All right, everybody. That's all we have for you. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we will talk to you next week.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Come on, guys. You guys want to come in?
Who's coming in?
2 dogs, 3 cats,
A horse, a chicken, and a sheep?
Pretty much.
The views and opinions expressed on the Voices from the Bench podcast are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the host or Voices from the Bench, LLC.